Greetings everyone, my name is Ectorville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Quint's Revenge. In the last part, I defeated all of the Mega Man 2 series Robot Masters, so now it's time to go after the Mega Man 3 series Robot Masters, beginning with Needleman. Here's a demonstration of the Leaf Shield as I showed before. I won't be using it this much in this game, mainly because they're better offerings, especially like the Metal Catcher, the Hard Knuckle, and the Needle Crusher, which I'll be getting soon enough after this stage is completed. I'll mainly be using it for enemies that are too low to hit safely, like that Hedgehog over there, or Spike Hog. Here we have the first gimmick of the stage. Over here we have these spike blocks, which alternate which part is spiky by going 90 degrees to the right or left. So if you time it right, you'll be able to get across. Sadly, it's not used in any other stage of this game, only here. And right there I basically just went past this giant vent by using the Crash Blaster twice. After a while, the Crash Blaster tears through most of his bosses without a sweat. Only two or three uses of that can destroy most enemies. There are some bugs with these cannons over here, but those were fixed in the newest update. In fact, at the time of recording this audio commentary, Update 29 of this game has been released, and that fixes a ton of bugs regarding a few enemies, made some, completely recoded the dash system, as well as fixed some of the boss fights. Here's the second gimmick of this stage. We have this spike wall over there, and as demonstrated by that unfortunate Hammer Joe, if it touches you, it's instant death. To get past it, you must hide yourself under those glass panes. As long as you're in those glass panes, you will not take any damage. Not too difficult, as there's only 2 or 3 uses of it. I wish there was a more difficult use of it later. And here's Needleman, who, due to a bug in Update 27, doesn't seem to have invincibility frames like all the other bosses, or most of the other bosses do. That was fixed in Update 29. He basically follows the set pattern where he jumps twice, and if you're close enough to him, he'll use his Needle Crusher near you. I should demonstrate it here. And then he'll fire a series of 2 needles, which will then bounce out across the room at least twice. And then he'll fire a rain of needles from the ceiling after that. But he repeats this verbatim for every cycle, so once you memorize the pattern, it's not too difficult. In fact, for most of the bosses in this game, as long as you memorize the pattern, it's not that difficult to defeat them. In fact, I wouldn't say any of the bosses here in this game are spastic or random. They're relatively straightforward and pattern based. To be fair, also the GB, excluding probably maybe Metal Man or Crash Man, but they're not too bad. Of course, that's kind of makes sense considering the Game Boy, my apologies, the bosses in the Game Boy were much more predictable than their NES incarnations. And by defeating Needleman, we got the Needle Crusher instead of the Needle Cannon. It's basically a short-range melee weapon. You basically fire a needle spear at the enemy, and it actually pierces through enemy shields. So that's pretty nice. And it's quite powerful as well. Most enemies will die in 1 or 2 hits from it, excluding bosses and mini-bosses, of course. We're in Hardman stage here. We can actually destroy the spine analog here, we're using either the Metal Catcher or the Needle Crusher. Or we could just use the Crash Blaster. Here we have these ball and mace chains, which I mostly remember from Super Mario Brothers, or somewhere else, and all these Chankeys or monkeys. Not too difficult to take care of. Here we have this mini-boss. It will actually, that crane on the top will, after a while, drop a rock, which will explode, and the 4-man over there will constantly fire pellet shots at your current position, so you have to guide it away from you. In this following segment, we have these Mets on minecarts, and also those flies dropping all those bees, or insects. Thankfully though, unlike on the NES version, we don't have slowdown, thankfully. That was one of the most annoying parts of this stage. Also, as a correction to one of the things I said in the previous video, in this game, the bosses, and weapon energy are all 28 points. I confused it with it being 20 points because of the way that the life bar is positioned. It's a little bit lower than the other Mega Man games and Mega Man fan games, so I interpreted or confused it as being lower. My apologies. Anyways, back to this stage. Yeah, and that's it, the stage is over. As I was saying about Needleman, I feel like the gimmicks could have been explored more with more difficult incarnations, but I'll get into that in the next stage. Here we have Hardman, who is even more pattern-based. He'll fire his fists at you, 2 of them, he'll retract it, so jump over it, and then, just like in the NES, he'll do a stomp, which will release all those shockwaves. Although, unlike in the NES version, once he does that stomp, you're not frozen in midair, which kind of makes more sense. But because of his slow speed, yeah, he's kind of a pushover. If you're on the ground when he stomps the ground, you'll have a minor knockback phase. It's not as bad as Gutsman's though. But as I was saying before, I wish that most of the stages, or pretty much all the stages, minus the final stage, were a bit longer, so that the gimmicks could be explored in more creative fashion, a more difficult manner, as well as a few other things. And I wish more of the gimmicks are in the end represented in the Wily Fortress when we get to that. Here we have Magnet Pan stage. We still have these walking robots, the magnets from above, but this time you can actually control the arc of where you were going. By pressing up, holding up or holding down, you can basically direct which part of the whether you'll be going up or going down faster. If you don't press any button, you'll slowly move upwards towards the magnet. This will be important very soon enough when we get to the big magnet segments. And here we have the hard knuckle. My apologies. It basically can take out those hammer jaws in one hit. And here's one of the mini bosses, this chainsaw. Normally I would just use the metal casher and spam it. It fires a series of 2 spikes to the left or right, depending on what side it's on, and then it'll ram towards you. And funny enough, this is the only time we'll actually ever see this mini boss again. Which is strange, as considering most of the other all the other mini bosses, excluding one other one, actually reappear in Wily Fortress. Here's where you really need to get used to pressing up and down. Well, mainly down here. As shown by that informational prompt over here, by pressing down you'll slowly move downwards, which is crucial for the upcoming segment here so you don't get yourself skewered on the spikes. And it's especially even more true in the Wily Fortress. Speaking of something I wanted to talk about earlier, the dash here is a little bit finicky to use, mainly because once you let go of the dash button, you don't necessarily immediately come to a stop. This was fixed in Update 29, where the entire dash system was recoded, so it's much more reliable to use now. And another note, that was another major revamp that was in the latest version. The entire soundtrack was basically replaced by the talented Joseph Collins. In fact, I would say overall it's a more superior soundtrack to the current one here, as this one is a little bit like a beta or alpha used for testing. Well, not exactly testing, it would be worse then, but it feels a bit incomplete. Whereas that one, which I'll be showing off in the next part, that feels much better and much more enjoyable to listen to. Though I would have preferred if I had the either RushJet1's remixes of the Game Boy soundtrack, or PrincessZelda2020, or I have to check her name. I'll link to that in the description and the annotation. I would have preferred their remixes of this theme of the songs. Oh well, at least the next one's better. Here we have Magnet Man, who jumps twice, one to the center of the room, then to the other part, then he releases all those magnet missiles, 3 of them, guide them away, and once the first one goes down, he'll be trying to pull you towards him using his magnets. So you have to position yourself carefully, but other than that, because he's completely pattern-based, it's not too difficult to defeat him. But that was only one of the stages where I felt the length was relatively appropriate with the gimmicks. For the other ones, I wish they were longer. Like I said, too short, and then it feels like it's not too. It feels like it's not so much of a. It feels like there's wasted potential. That's what I'm trying to say. After all, this is a combination of the old gimmicks from the NES and GB, but mainly NES it feels like, though some things are missing, like all those spikes from Needleman's stage, with the addition of new things, like in this stage the introduction of force beams. Make sure you use dashing, otherwise you won't make it past. But I just wish they were a bit longer so that most of their gimmicks could be explored in more detail. And like I said, there's a thing called Too Long, as evidenced by Mega Man Revolution or Mega Man Eternal? Not Eternal, a certain ROM hack. But this feels a bit too short. I was hoping for stages more along the lengths of Mega Man Unlimited or Mega Man Rock Force. But it's not too much of a negative in this game. The level designs are pretty solid. It's just that I wish they had more ideas and more rooms to explore. Here we have the cat mini-boss, where one of them will fire, the bottom will fire pellets at you and the top one will fire yarn or fur balls. You can easily just take them out by using 2 or 3 crash blasters though. And they don't appear in Wily Fortress for some strange reason. Here we have to get past these segments of piranha plant robots, or something along those lines. But yeah, other than that, I would say this game is relatively solid, even though it's technically still an alpha. Although I would say that some of the musical choices are, well, the musical choices are basically almost all with the exception of 1 or 2 things. It's all lifted from the original Game Boy title and remixed. And yes, and there's a trippy Wily symbol on the top. Here's Top Man, which I actually found to be one of the hardest bosses originally. He fires these a pattern of tops, 3 tops, and you usually have to get past one, and you can only usually jump through them after the first or second or third is thrown, depending on which pattern. Because after he fires those 3 tops, he'll immediately spin to the other part of the room where he's immune to your shots. Of course, if you don't get the pattern down, you can take quite a few hits. But if you get used to it, it's not too difficult. And we get the spinning top, which I actually find to be even more useless than the top spin. Yeah, I'll basically explain why. Anyways, now that all the Robot Masters have been defeated, Wily Fortress has been unlocked. So I'll be continuing on to there in the next part. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Doodles!